Welcome. I'm so excited for today's live stream. We are doing donuts. Hold on, making sure I can get comments. All right. If you are watching, let me know so that I know everything's working okay and that you can hear me. So today we're making homemade donuts. Now these are raised donuts, not cake donuts, meaning that they have a yeast-based dough. So we're going to start right away because the yeast actually needs to sit for a little bit. So while we're waiting for everybody to join us, I'm going to get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is add yeast to our bowl. And now we want to add our liquid. Now for this recipe, I'm using milk, and what you want to do to make sure that the yeast blooms properly is you want your liquid to be between 110 degrees and 115 degrees. So I'm microwaving my milk for 40 seconds and then I'll stir and take the temperature, and then we will repeat until it's at that right phase. So I've already done 40 seconds. I'm doing another 40 seconds right now. Usually it takes 2 to 3 times for me if the milk is really cold. If you've had your milk out, obviously it won't take as much time. All right, Margaret, Lauren, Lindsay, Alice, it's working for you guys. Julie, Sarah, and Lorraine, yay! Looks like everything is working, knock on wood, because you know how some weeks go with these live streams. Okay, so let's pull the milk out and give it a stir. And the reason you want to stir it is because there's hot spots in the milk and you don't want to take the temperature inaccurately. All right, so we're at 96, a little bit, probably another 40 seconds. Actually, I'm going to do 20 seconds because once you get close like this, it doesn't take much. Now we're also adding sugar later in the recipe, but to help yeast bloom, I tend to add a little bit of sugar at this stage as well, but that's a personal preference. There are a lot of people out there who say that adding sugar to the yeast milk mixture doesn't do any good. Some people who say it does. This is the sugar I'm adding later. I'm just going to take a little bit of it, a little pinch, and just add it to the yeast. I've never found that it hurts, so might as well. Alright, got the milk out. I realized I forgot to plug in this microphone. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so again, we're going to give it a little stir so that the hot spots are all gone. Oh, perfect. Kind of move the thermometer around. Perfect. That is right where we want it. So, we're going to add this right to the yeast mixture. And I try to make sure that I get all the yeast nice and wet. There we go. And now, usually this is the stage when I'm making breads. Oops. This is the stage where I'm making breads and other doughs, where I just let the warm milk and the yeast bloom. It takes about 10 minutes. But for this recipe, we're actually going to add some of the flour, just 1.5 cups. And we're going to stir that. Until it's incorporated. Why I'm not using the dough hooks already, because of all this mixing that we're trying to do right now. So now we're going to cover it and let it sit and bloom. And usually I let it sit and bloom for 10 to 20 minutes. We want it to get nice and foamy and large. But obviously, because we're doing this live, this is going to be a much shorter rise. But that's okay because I already have some pre-made dough ready to go after the first rise. So these donuts once we get the dough all put together, they have a first rise, and then we shape them, and then they have a second rise. So this little blooming time doesn't even count as a rise. So I'm going to let that get at least a little foamy so you can see how it reacts. I'm going to talk about a couple of the other preparations that I'm doing for these donuts. So I have a fryer. I actually have multiple fryers. And fryers tend to be about this wide and about this steep, and they hold a lot of oil. And they're great for so many recipes, like my deep fried fair foods, cookie dough balls, Oreos, cheesecakes, my Monte Cristo sandwiches, my chimichanga cheesecakes, my mac and cheese bites. I make a lot of fried food. And so you can totally use that for the donuts, but because they're a smaller area on top, you can only fit like 2 donuts at a time. So I'm actually using my electric skillet that's about 12 inches wide. As long as you can get a 1.5 cups of oil in the base, that's all you really need to know. And I'm already preheating that oil so that it's ready to go. You can, of course, use a pot. I would use a pot that is at least 3 inches tall, so you can get 1.5 inches to 2 inches of oil in there. They can be as big as you want. Remember, the bigger it is, the more oil you'll have to use. But you will want to have a good thermometer so you can try to hold the oil as exact a temperature as you can. I find that we're going for 360, and I find that between medium, high tends to be a good spot. But again, everybody's ovens and stoves are a little bit different, so for you it will depend. Now, as a twist, I'm also going to show you how you could use this to make baked donuts, and so I also have a tray ready for that. So we'll do some baked and some fried. I'm going to show you a couple different techniques that I've learned over my donut making years that will make this as easy as possible for you. Oil. I get a lot of questions about oil. I just use vegetable oil or canola oil for this, but of course you could use peanut oil. You just want to make sure that it's an oil that doesn't struggle at high temperatures. Like an olive oil doesn't do very well at high temperatures, so you would not want to use an olive oil. You'll get a really bad taste from that. So any oil that can handle the high temperatures will be fine. Now you can reuse your oils, because I do a lot of frying. I reuse my oils, and I get asked about it a lot. But the first thing that I do is when I'm done frying something, I let it cool completely, and then I have a container that I keep that I pour the oil back into. Now, if it's something that was not meat, like donuts obviously are not meat, then I will keep it in one container. If it's anything I fried that was meat, like my pork katsudons, and then I put it in a different container. So I have 2 different oils. I have like oil that's been contaminated by meat, and oil that has not. Now, if I'm ever low on my meat oil, I can add the oil that was not contaminated by meat to that and continue to keep that that oil there, but you don't ever want to put the meat oil into the non-meat oil, so cross-contamination. Now, my non-meat oil I actually keep for a lot longer. The meat oil I tend to change out probably a couple times a year, just so you don't have any issues with rancidity. Is that a word? Probably not. Anyway, so are there any questions so far? Broke Baker, you love yeast donuts? Me too. Soria, hello. Lorraine, hi. Lauren, Lindsay, Lauren, Alice, Brian, Peru, Hong Kong, Sweden, Scotland. We have people from all over the world today. That is so fun. I'm actually trying to decide, side note, my kids are with spring break with their dad this year, and so I'm trying to decide where I should go. I have a whole week, so give me recommendations of where I should go check out for just a week, and then in the summer I have 2 weeks. So I have my longer and my shorter options for times this year. All right, so let's look at this. It hasn't been even 10 minutes, but so you can see how it's already bigger than it was, and it's getting soft and foamy, and we're getting a lot of bubbles. Now, if you wait for the full 20 minutes, it will actually end up with the mixture, hold on, with a mixture about halfway up the bowl, right up here. It'll get nice and foamy and big and fat. I like to wait a minimum of 10 minutes, but 20 minutes it is great as well. So it just kind of depends on how big of a hurry you're in and if you're doing other stuff. So we are going to call this good for now. Again, this is just for the live stream in real life. Please don't stop at this point. And the first thing you want to do is give it a little mix, and what that's going to do is deflate it. So if the dough has risen all the way up to here, it's actually going to deflate a little stringy, and that's just fine. So now what we're going to do is add a bunch of the other ingredients. So we're going to add the rest of the sugar, and we're going to add some eggs. Ooh. I have plastic wrap on everything. We're also going to add just some egg yolks. Now you can add 2 eggs and 2 egg yolks, or you could add just 3 eggs, but I like the richer flavor that you're going to get from the yolks. So personal preference. We're going to add teaspoon of salt. And we're going to add our vanilla. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. All right, is anybody other than me ready for this whole vanilla expense shortage thing to be over? It's driving me down. All right, so now we're going to mix this until it's completely incorporated. Now we're going to add another 1.5 cups of flour. And cover this up. We don't get a flour cloud everywhere. Okay, now with this on low, hold on, I'm going to add some softened butter until it's all incorporated. I'm just adding a couple tablespoons at a time. Once that is all incorporated, I'm actually going to take this out and we're going to put in some dough hooks. Margaret, I'm so glad I'm not the only one. Vanilla prices are driving me absolutely batty. All right, try to get as much dough as we can in here. Remember, this is sticky, so don't feel like you have to get every single thing. Just get what you can. And then, of course, wash your hands. Okay, switch over to a dough hook. Now this is when we're going to start adding just 1/2 cup of flour at a time, and what we're looking for is for the dough to pull away and clean the sides. Now I did this with a metal bowl earlier today for my first batch, and it never did pull away, and I was really worried about it getting too tough, so I just stopped at one point. I don't know if it was just the metal bowl I was using or if it's a trouble with all metal bowls, because it's actually my first time using a metal bowl. So I would recommend plastic or glass just based on that experience, but if your metal bowl has no problem with dough pulling away from it and not getting too tough, then that's just fine. I don't know if it was the type of metal that my bowl is made of or what, but I will just give you that warning because it kind of struck me as a little off. So, oh, come on. It's trouble switching cameras. So again, I'm just going to add 1/2 cup at a time. And I'm going to bring that up to like a medium high. And as soon as the flour is incorporated, I'll add more. Closer, and its areas are starting to become clean, so we're really close. So now instead of adding a whole 1/2 cup at a time, I'm going to add like a 1/4 cup at a time as we get close. Ooh, if I can get all my flour in here. Not quite there. You save your frying oil and bacon fat in separate containers. If you don't use it right away, you place it in the fridge. Yeah, I would place bacon fat in the fridge for sure. I don't bother with oils doing that though. All right, I had to go get out some more flour. It's funny, the reason that you want to be flexible when it comes to adding flours to bread is because it will totally change depending on altitude and time of day. So the last batch that I made just a couple of hours ago, I used the full 5 cups of flour. This time around, I've already used the total cups of flour, and I'm still not quite there yet. So you want to be flexible with the amount of flour that you're using. It's more about the dough texture than it is about following the recipe exactly for breads. So just a side note there. Yes, you guys are already waiting for the prices to come down too. Oh, I know, it's terrible. It's the worst. All right, a little bit more flour. Starting to clean the bowl. I'm just going to add a little bit more. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now that it's started to clean the dough, the next thing that you're looking, or clean the bowl, the next thing you're looking for in a dough is stretchability. When you take some of the dough, one, it shouldn't be overly sticky. It will be sticky and tacky, but you should be able to like clean your hand with the dough, and you should be able to grab the corners and pull and stretch without it ripping. So we got a little bit of a rip there, and it's a little, you see how it kind of cleans my hand when I retouch the dough? So that's a good amount of sticky that it's re-cleaning itself. So now we just need a little bit better stretch. I'm going to beat it just a little bit longer, not much. Okay, and it's also getting a lot smoother, as you can see. So again, even though it's really sticky, see how easily I can clean that stuff off my hand? So that's a great sign. Now we're going to take the ball, grab the corners, and pull, and that has a great stretch. See how it's getting nice and thin, almost see-through, without ripping? So this dough is ready to go. So, oh, wrong thing. So now what we want to do is get a bowl greased. Oh. So I'm taking a big bowl, and I'm going to spray it with olive oil, or you can pour in olive oil, whatever you want to do. And we're going to take the dough out of here. Move this out of the way. Oh, I almost dropped the lid. All right. Oh, wrong camera. All right. So I'm just pulling the dough out, and it might start to stick to the side of the bowl, but it should also at the same time easily clean out of the bowl as you grab the dough. And if there's anything left in the bowl, I just take a little glob of the dough and I use it to like clean up. See how easily? And then it actually makes the bowl easier to clean up later as well. See? Easy peasy. And that is a sign of good dough. Alright, now I'm going to clean off my fingers. I'm going to grab the dough, kind of flip it over in the oil so it's oiled on all sides. And I'm going to get some plastic wrap. Now I'm going to take that same olive oil and spray the plastic wrap, and now I'm going to flip it over. And this way, the plastic wrap that's touching the dough will be oiled. There we go. Next up, we're going to put this in the fridge, and it will be ready in an hour, but it can stay in the fridge for longer. If you're going to leave it in the fridge for longer, I would recommend, like if you're not quite ready to make the donuts, I would recommend the hour mark, checking on the dough, because it might need to be knocked down a little bit, because it does get really big. I'm going to show you. Whoa. Take this one out. Okay, here we go. Look how big that has gotten. It's quite large. So I'm going to open up the plastic wrap. And because I sprayed my plastic wrap, it should come right off the dough easily. Going to flour my work surface with some more of that same bread flour. And then I'm going to knock down the dough and grab it out. So this dough has been in the fridge for, I want to say, about 2 hours. Now, while I do add flour, I also try to pat the flour off so that it's not super excessive, because I'm not trying to add more flour to this. So now this is when we want to roll it out, or I actually prefer to pat it out. Rolling stretches the dough a little bit differently than patting does. And I find that it actually pats out so quickly, it's not really worth getting, oh, got a little fuzz ball, hold on. There we go. Not really worth getting the rolling pin out. Just make sure, I put the flour on, but then I brush it off. We just want to make sure that there's no sticky spots. All right, I'm going to flip one more time. Again, same thing. What I need is, when I did the cooking school in Paris, they had this awesome brush that brushed off the excess flour, and I've been meaning to get one, I just haven't yet. All right, so you want to pat it to about half an inch thick. All right, that is ready. Now my next tip is actually what we're going to do next. So if you are going to bake your donuts, you're going to cut some out and you're going to put them on a Silpat mat to let them rise. So you're going to do a couple that way first. So I have a 3.5 inch donut cutter. Now you can of course just use round cutters. That works too. And you don't just want to cut the whole sheet, you want to pull them out right away. Because otherwise the dough will continue to expand and it will stick together, and then you won't be able to get the donuts and the donut holes out quite as easily. Ooh. Now once you set them down on your tray, you do not want to touch them again. Right? You want to leave them alone. Make sure before I cut that I have a nice even surface. All right, so we'll stop with this one now. Do a couple of the others. Okay, so that is one option, and that is for if you're going to bake these. The next option that I originally used to do all the time is I cover a tray in plastic wrap, and I spray it so that it won't stick, and I'll be able to pull the donuts off later. So we'll do a couple that way as well. And I'm going to tell you why I don't. Now you can manipulate the dough at this point. You can't really reuse the scraps, so any way that you can kind of push the dough back into itself to use it as effectively as possible, the better. So you have as little scraps as possible. Alright, so I have this like thin little point right here, but if I kind of manipulate the dough before cutting, I can get more use out of my dough. Alright, I'll do one more this way and then we'll move on to the final way that I like to do. Okay, there we go. And then the way that I do it now is I actually take parchment squares. I'm going to put a donut on each of these parchment squares. And the reason for that is, well, I guess it'll be easier to show you. Yeah, I will show you the reasoning for that when we get to that point. All right, so are there any questions so far on the dough or cutting out the donuts? Perfect dough. Thank you so much. Can you do this with any kind of flour? I recommend bread flour because of the protein content. I'm sure there are donut recipes out there that don't use bread flour, but this one is specific to bread flour. And bread flour is not expensive or hard to find. And you can make your own, but it's not quite as easy as making your own cake flour is. So I don't bother. I just buy the bread flour. You want to get it nice and clean. If possible, you'll get a better outcome of your donuts if you do. So giving it a little turn helps with that. All right, at the end, after you press down. All right, so now we're kind of down to the end, which tends to be a little bit scrappier. There we go. And I think I could probably get 2 more donuts out of these. So let's see if we can do that. So this is what that looks like now. Okay, let's see if we can manipulate this enough to get a couple more donuts out of it. So I kind of press it together and then pat it. All right, 2 final donuts. So I was able to get 16 donuts, which is kind of usual. If you roll your donuts out thinner, you could get a little bit more. All right, let's clean this up. Now I do know people who will re-knead this together and cut more donuts. And I will say it kneads together fairly well, but because of all the excess flour that is now on it and re-kneading it, they're going to be really tough donuts, and honestly I find that nobody likes them. So I don't bother. I just toss it. I'll wipe this counter down. All right, so next thing we want to do is take our donuts, and we want to cover them for their rise. So I'm going to come back to the whole plastic wrap thing. And once you put them down, you don't want to touch them again because this is when they're growing and getting poofy. So do as I say, not as I do, clearly. So same thing, I'm going to bring the plastic over and I'm going to spray it. And then I'm going to flip it. So then this way the sprayed side is the side that's touching the donuts. And do this with all three of our versions. So that was for baking, and both of these are for frying. So this is the one that's on the sprayed plastic already. Over. You want to make sure that they're covered all the way. And then finally our ones on the parchment squares. Must be getting near the end of my plastic wrap. It's fighting me. All right, and flip it over. And now this is the second rise. Preheat my oven for the ones that we're going to bake. Now this second rise is not as long as the first rise. The first rise can be anywhere from an hour to like 10 hours depending on how long you leave the dough in the fridge. But this rise is only 5 to 20 minutes and it totally depends on how quickly your dough gets poofy. So what we want to do is check it every 5 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on for 5 minutes. And then we will check the dough. So I'm going to clean up again. There's now not only flour everywhere, but non-stick spray. And in the meantime, we are going to get the glazes ready while we're waiting for those so that they'll be all ready when the donuts are ready. So the first thing that I dip the donuts in is actually just a cinnamon sugar mixture. And you want to do that when the donuts are fresh. So this is like 1.5 cups sugar to 2 tablespoons cinnamon, whatever ratio that you like. So I just keep that aside, super easy to mix. For the next one, we're going to make a classic glaze, just a vanilla glaze. So what you want to do is take your powdered sugar and some milk and some vanilla. That is all that this takes. So I start with 2 tablespoons of milk. If I could find my tablespoon. There it is. We're going to start with 2 tablespoons of milk and go from there. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So super simple. And we're just going to give that a stir. And at first it's going to look really thick and chunky. Lulu, Peggy, Michelle, hello. Hi Shirley. Green Meadow, hello. You love donuts, too bad you can't have them. I know, right? Alright, you want to get all this powdered sugar incorporated. And if it's too thick, this is when you add more milk. So obviously this is going to be a little on the thick side. I'm going to add another tablespoon of milk and go from there. Now the thickness of the glaze is not an exact science. It's really about what you want, how thick you want your glaze. The thinner it is, the better it's going to like run over the donuts. Have any of you guys been to Krispy Kreme where they have like the machine that does all of this? Anyway, at the end, after the donuts are cooked, they go through like this curtain of glaze. It just gets utterly covered. And it coats the whole top and the sides of the donuts. So if you want a glaze more like that, you want it a little on the thinner side so it can expand and go down the sides and cover the donut really well. If you want it to sit more along the top, then you want it to be a little thicker, then obviously you want the icing to be a little thicker. So let's take a look at this and see what we think. So for me, this is still a little thick for a vanilla glaze that I want, but I'm not going to add a full tablespoon this time. It doesn't take much liquid to make a big difference when it comes to icing and glazes. So once you're close to where you want it, just do like a teaspoon at a time. See how smooth that is now? All right, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to set this one aside. Now we're going to work on the maple. So for the maple, I'm going to add a little bit of milk again. I'm going to start with just 1 tablespoon, or about that. And then I'm going to add some actual maple syrup. And we're going to give that a stir. And see how the texture is doing, and then decide from there. Alright, so it's still a little thick, so I'm going to add some more milk. And now the maple glaze, I actually want a little bit on the thicker side. That's definitely going to need more milk. Oh, the other thing that I want to add is, oh no, the camera went off. Lovely. Oh, that camera needs to cool down clearly. Okay. Pour out the rest of the maple syrup. Okay, next we want to add, there's our timer, a little bit of mapleine. And mapleine is what I use to make my own homemade maple syrup. It's very strong and it's very dark. I like it a lot better than maple extract even. So I did add Green Meadow, I did add vanilla to the first one. Alright. I'm going to add a little bit more milk again. Because of adding the maple syrup, I'm never quite sure how much milk to add, so it's always better to just add a little bit of the milk at a time versus adding it all and then having too much, and then trying to compensate by adding more powdered sugar, and then everything. It just kind of gets out of whack. So it's always better to just add a little bit of milk at a time. Okay, so we're getting a lot closer now. Still a little on the thick side. And in the meantime, I want to check on our donuts because the timer went off. So let's check on the first ones that we did. And how you check them is you just press down, and if it bounces back slowly, it's not quite ready yet. If it bounces back quickly, it is ready. So these are very close. I think another 5 minutes should do it. So we're going to finish making the glazes, and that should be ready to go. Okay. I'm going to add another tablespoon of milk, actually maybe half a tablespoon. And see how that goes. Oh, that's looking a lot better. All right, so I think that's good for the maple glaze. Yeah, that's looking nice. All right, so now we're going to do the chocolate. Now, in the past, I've used, sorry, I got glaze all over my hand. In the past, I've used cocoa powder for my glaze, just like the vanilla one, but with cocoa powder. And because cocoa powder is drying, a little bit of extra milk. But I was never really happy with it. And so I recently switched to making it with real chocolate. And basically I'm going to make like a ganache. So I'm going to take this chocolate and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter to it. And then I'm going to microwave it. Now, when I microwave ganache instead of using the stove, it never turns out quite as good. So, but because we're going to be adding this to so many other ingredients, it's going to be okay. I'm just going to use my melt chocolate button and see how that goes. All right, cinnamon and sugar, vanilla, maple chocolate. This will be our last glaze, and then we will start cooking everything. So I have the oven preheating, and there it goes. And I already have the oil hot. So I'll set the glazes aside so that they will be ready to go. Let's do a little bit of cleaning while that chocolate is melting. Because you don't even want to know how messy it gets over here on the side. Are there any questions about the glazes while I'm working on this? All right, so let's see how our ganache is going. Now we just want to stir the butter and chocolate together until they're incorporated. I find that using the melt chocolate button instead of the melt butter option works better because it heats it at a lower temperature and I get a smoother outcome. Now also remember, I don't use chocolate chips for this. Chocolate chips are not made to melt, so I just chop up some quality chocolate for this. Oh, look how beautiful. So smooth and pretty. All right, so I'm going to add this right to the powdered sugar. Probably get a spatula out to clean this better. Don't want to waste any chocolatey goodness. This chocolate's the best. All right. There we go. And now we're going to add some milk. So let's start with 2 tablespoons. And yes, I have chocolate everywhere already. And of course, some vanilla as well. Because vanilla is a flavor enhancer, just like salt. And then just stir it all together. Now again, cocoa tends to be, and chocolate tends to dry things out, so you might need more milk than you used for the other ones to get the consistency that you're looking for. But as always, I just start with a couple tablespoons and I go from there. Better to take your time than to rush through it and have it not be exactly what you're hoping to achieve. Now you can use a whisk. I just find a fork super easy and convenient. So. All right. Oh, and it's been another 5 minutes. Perfect timing. All right. So, and again, I like my chocolate glaze to be a little thicker than my vanilla glaze because I kind of want it to sit more on the donut and be super runny. Okay. So our glazes are done. Let's see if I can get my overhead camera to work again so you can see it. Yes, I'm licking all the chocolate off my fingers. All right, maybe not. So I'm going to put these all aside. The glazes, that is. All right, and the other thing, wipe everything down again. because it's a mess again. All right, the other thing that I like to prepare before I start any of the frying or baking is another pan that has paper towels on the bottom and a rack on top, so that I don't have to over fry anything by being like, oh no, I don't have anything prepared. So have this ready to go before you start. Anything else? Let's bring our fryer into frame. Let's see if I can get this camera working again. Ooh. It's always so much fun fixing the overheads. Oh, come on. Oh, okay. Might have to. My overhead camera has been giving me a lot of problems lately. I might have to get a new one. Let's see. Aha! Got it working. Yay! Okay, it's back, and I'm back. All right, so let's get the fryer into frame. I'm gonna take the lid off. Be careful, because it's gonna be hot. Warm. All right, so let's take a look at our donuts again. So this is a lot bigger than it was before. Ah, that looks great. That's perfect. And I said it the opposite before. If it bounces back fast, it's not quite ready yet. When it bounces back slow like this, it's ready. So I'm going to take the plastic off, and for baking, I'm baking at 400 degrees for just 5 minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to bring over the ones on the plastic wrap, and I'm going to show you, hopefully, why I don't love this version as much anymore. So when you go to, oh, wrong one. All right, so when you go to grab your donut off the tray, let's see if we can get some more, there we go. You still have to grab it, and see how much I'm manipulating the donut to get it off the tray. Yes, it comes up easily because of the plastic wrap, but I'm still pulling at the dough. And then as I put it in, hold on. As I put it in, I don't want to burn my hand, so I tend to hold it by one side, which then tends to stretch out the donut, which I don't really want to be doing. So that is why I don't really love doing it that way. And I like to do it for about a minute on each side. I'm trying to remember where the first one was. I think this was the first one. But oops, you just want to keep an eye on it. Now, there we go, that was the first one. Now notice I'm not grabbing these with tongs. If I used tongs, what would happen is as I grab the donuts to turn them, it actually squished the donuts. So you want to use something where you can just kind of go underneath and carefully flip it. Same thing with the donut holes. So the first side I tend to do for about a minute, and for the second side I tend to do for just a little bit less. All right. Oops, that's the one I accidentally stretched out too much. So these are looking like the perfect color. And for the donut holes, I just kind of, they tend to like a side, so it's kind of hard to get the donut holes to cook on both sides evenly, but they're so small that it's usually not a problem. All right, so that is our first batch of donuts. Easy peasy, right? All right, so now I'm going to show you the reason that I like the parchment squares. All right, so let's see the overhead. So for this, I just grab the whole square, and I can do that without manipulating the donut at all. And because the donut tends to stick on the square, hold on. Still don't want to burn my hand. So use this, and I just slide that right in. Now it's not going to hurt the parchment paper to be in oil, and the parchment paper should just slide right off. So I will use the tongs for this to grab this out. See how easy it is to just pull that out of there? And then I didn't have to manipulate the donuts at all, right? Forgot to keep track of which one I put in first. And it's okay to turn it more than once if you need to. Just pop those donut holes over. And by doing it this way, you get a great light color, but they're cooked all the way through. So anyway, and see how these aren't warped at all, and I didn't accidentally squish them in any way, shape, or form, and they're still nice and fluffy. I just find that I get way better results with that technique. And I just kind of keep flipping them and keep an eye on it. The donut holes tend to cook a little faster, but again, we're just kind of going for that golden color. Okay, and that is the oven being done. Whoop. Okay, let's see if I can do this one-handed. Okay, so first I'm going to pull these out. Okay, and then I'm going to show you these baked ones. So they're going to be a lighter color than the ones that you fry, of course, but they're cooked all the way through, and then they're baked and not fried. So it's kind of a personal preference for you there. Clear. Okay, so I'm going to fry the last couple donuts real fast, and then we will do the glazing. So the last two parchment paper. Oh, seriously? Stupid timer. I thought I turned that off. All right. Oh, come on, little ball. I can just feel the bubbles popping in this donut as I grab it. Flip the little balls. Whoop. Now you want to flip your donuts carefully just because you don't want them to flip really fast and splash everywhere. So I tend to, I don't know, kind of go to the edge and let that help me flip it. But everybody kind of has their own technique for flipping. Make some. Am I taking any part of the Food Network Halloween Wars this year? No, I was in season 1, and unless they do like a comeback favorites one, I can't imagine being asked to do it again. But I would love to do something with them again. It was a really, really fun show, and the contestants and I are still really close, and we still talk fairly often, and we just had a great group. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm trying not to, these are still delicate because we're not frying them too much, so I'm trying to be careful as I make room for these. All right. Oh, look, that one did not flip earlier. It keeps going back. Okay. Oh, one fell over. Okay, almost done. Azar, hi, love you, thank you so much. Green Meadow, okay, sorry, no big deal. I miss stuff all the time. All right, let's pull these out. For those of you on YouTube, if you just click open the description box, the recipe is down in there. For those of you watching on Facebook, let's turn this off. Oops, sorry, hair. Oop, turn the oil off. For those of you watching on Facebook, there's a link to my blog where you can get the printable recipe. Okay, whew, that one ended up a little on the dark side. Not the Jedi dark side though, just the dark side. All right. Whew, hot, 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 hot. Okay, now I'm going to let this cool completely like I talked about earlier. And let's bring in the glazes again. All right, and I'm going to get another cooling rack so I have a little bit more space. Okay. Oh, one of my lights just went out. That's weird. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, so we will start with the cinnamon and sugar actually. So you want to do the cinnamon and sugar when your donut is fairly warm. And I like to make sure that I get all the sides really good, and then I also like to make sure I get in the middle. But I'm, you know, a sugaraholic, so that shouldn't really surprise anyone. So that is what the fried donut looks like with the cinnamon and sugar. Oh, wrong camera. So now I'll do the baked donut in the cinnamon sugar. And the baked donut does not hold the cinnamon and sugar as well. Because even though it's warm, it doesn't have that same outer skin. See? So, oh, come on, focus. So I tend to not use the cinnamon and sugar glaze on the baked donuts. Just personal preference, because look how good this one looks, right? Amazing. All right, so let's switch over to the vanilla glaze. Give it another quick stir, just because sometimes it separates a little bit. All right, so I do get asked a lot, like the best way to hold a donut for glazing, and it's really just a personal preference thing. I tend to hold it with, oh, hold on, I know what's wrong. Put that down there. My centering thing is not centered. There we go. That should help. All right, so I tend to hold it with these 3 fingers, sometimes with just these 2, but I kind of want to lift it up fairly evenly. So if you try to pull straight up, it tends to get stuck a little bit, so I turn it a little bit, and I let it drop. I let it drip just slightly, but I want to flip it while it's still fairly drippy so that I get those glazed sides, right? That's what I'm looking for. I want more of that Krispy Kreme glazed look. So now here is the baked version. Now the baked version is just, has a softer outside. It doesn't have that crispy outside the way the fried ones do, but the inside should still be the same. So that is our vanilla glaze. Let's bring in our maple. And again, sometimes if you leave them too long, they get a little crusty on the top, so another reason to stir them. Separation and crusty tops. Okay. A little bit of dripping, and then flip over. So again, I went with a slightly thinner glaze. If you like your maple thicker, just don't add as much milk and keep it more thick. So personal preference. And now while this glaze is wet, this is the time if you want to add anything to it, like sprinkles or coconuts or nuts or anything like that. This is the time to do that while it's wet, because once it sets, you won't be able to add stuff. I mean, a little, but not really good. So I would just have another bowl that was filled with nuts or sprinkles, or I like to do bacon on the maple. All right, so remember our chocolate one is actually a thicker glaze. See how much thicker that is than the other ones? So you're going to see the difference that makes on these donuts. Oh, also, one other note. Oop, come on. The warmth of your donut level will also depend on the spreading of the glaze. I like to dip this right now while they're warm, because I like that warm donut and the glaze infusing within the donut. But if you like your glaze to be more around the donut, you can wait till they cool. Just a personal preference. Okay. So you can see how much thicker that is. I'm trying to get a little bit more on there. And because the donut is warm, it will help that glaze kind of smooth itself out. So there's the fried donut. And let's do the baked donut now. The baked donuts tend to be a little softer, so they're a little bit harder to get out of the glaze. And there we go. All right. Let's take a look at all our donuts. Check out the mess left behind over here from the glaze. All right, so this is all 4 toppings and both the baked and the fried versions. Okay, let's do a little bit of cleaning. There you go. Okay, so that is it. We have the cinnamon and sugar, vanilla, maple, and chocolate. What do you guys think? Can you make your scraps make apple fritters? You know, Lorian, that's actually a great idea. You totally could do that. Will the glazes crust over? Yes, they will, June. That's a great question. Of course, I usually don't get them a lot of time because I eat them right away. But yes, they will crust over. I have some earlier today that did. What temperature do you use, Nancy? For the frying, I do 350. For the baking, I do 400. Okay, so let's try them. You guys know that this is the best part of every video for me. All right, so we'll start with the cinnamon and sugar, and I'll start with the baked version. So let's see. Maybe we'll do. So look how soft and easily that rips apart. Ah, so good. They're just so soft. It's like a roll, but sweet. You know, that was a big bite. Remember, the baked versions do not crust over the way the fried ones do. So personally, I like the fried ones. But, you know, obviously, I like to fry everything. All right, so let's rip this one apart. And you get that same softness inside. And cinnamon and sugar fried donuts are one of the best things ever. One, because they're messy, and I think all good food should be a little messy. And too, because the cinnamon sugar is all over the donut versus the glaze, which is just on top. So I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so here is the vanilla glaze. And again, because the glaze is also thinner, that means it's going to be thinner on the donut as well. So if you want more thicker glaze on top, then you do have to go with a thicker glaze, obviously. So this is more, I do this glaze thin, more like the Krispy Kreme style, because the donuts have a sweetness of their own, so I don't feel like they need a super thick glaze on top. Because remember, how you get it thicker is by adding more powdered sugar. So basically it's just adding more sugar, which I don't feel the need for. I feel like this thickness of glaze is perfect for a vanilla glaze. And you can see it starting to crust over already. You can see those cracks in it. I don't know if you can. But anyway, so it's starting to crust over already. But because it's warm, ugh, so good. So good. I love that crispness on the outside. You guys, this is the best day. I get to try 8 different kinds of donuts at once. So good. A classic vanilla glaze. All right, this is basically a copycat Krispy Kreme donut. If that's what you love, and because they don't give the free hot nows, then make this recipe, use this glaze. Everybody will be happy. Have you guys ever had a hamburger made with a donut? Yeah, I would do. This is the one I would use for donut hamburgers. All right. So you can see, hopefully you can see the crusting on this one better as I break it. It kind of breaks apart. All right. So, I mean, they all pretty much look the same. I don't know why I'm still showing you the middle of all of them. Now, I tend to like my maple a little bit on the thicker side, but that maple lean is such a strong flavor that this is enough, right? There's a grocery store near me that does maple frosting on their maple bars instead of a maple glaze, and I feel like that's too much. I feel like a glaze is the right way to go, but personal preference. All right, and here we have the fried version. It's not wanting to maple. I want to say, if I have a choice, my go-to donut is always a maple. But oh, you guys all know about my maple obsession, so it's not really that surprising. Oh, that's so good. Now it just needs a handful of freshly fried crispy bacon on top. Oh, that would be so good. I made some bacon last night because I made my loaded baked potato soup. I should have kept some aside. I didn't think about it. All right, so now the chocolate one, because it's the freshest, is not going to be as crusty, but it will eventually crust over too. Right now it's just still warm. But I kind of like the whole warm and gooey glazed donut thing. So I would say, if I had a choice, I would have fresh donuts, freshly glazed every time. My favorite, we went to a donut place a couple years ago, and when you ordered it, that's when they fried your donut. So like they just had the dough there, and you ordered it, and they would take the dough and fry it, put it in glaze, and hand it to you. And it was the best thing ever. I have a really hard time going to donut stores now just because I'm like, oh, that's like hours old. I don't think I can eat that. So I'm all about doing it this way. Now, as much as a chocoholic as I am, chocolate donuts have never really been my go-to. I would go with maple, then cinnamon sugar, then vanilla glaze, and then chocolate if I was like putting these in a edibility order. Oh my word, my screen is so dirty, my hands are so dirty, I'm having trouble switching the cameras. Come on. There we go. All right, and final one. Crisp fried donut with chocolate glaze. I don't want to stop and wash my hands every time, but I am pretty messy at this point. Now, again, my first choice would be fried because I like the crispiness of it. But if you're, I wanted to show you could bake these donuts because I know a lot of people are more health conscious than me. I guess that's the polite way of saying that. For me, I'd always go for flavor and texture and perfectness in my food over health. obviously. Anyway, so that is it. That is all the donuts. I'm going to go glaze the rest, and I'm going to eat some more and enjoy warm, fresh donuts before they get like an hour old, and then I won't eat them. But these are really easy to do. You can make the dough while your kids are at school, keep it in the fridge, and when they get home you can cut it out while they're showing you their homework. The doughs can be rising, and then what I do is I set up a glaze station for my kids. I'll put all 4 glazes out, and I'll also put bowls of sprinkles and nuts and shredded coconut and stuff like that out, and let them kind of create their own. Kind of like doing sugar cookies at home, which we do a lot too. It's just, I like any food that has stations. Waffle bars, crepe bars, donut bars. It's just a fun after school thing that I like to do with my kids. So in the comments down below, let me know if you give this recipe a try. Tell me what you thought. I will stay on for a couple more minutes and answer some questions, but that's it. We're done. Thanks for watching, and next Tuesday I'll be live again. In the comments you can also let me know if there's anything that you specifically would like to see during my live next week. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Where do you get the Mapeline for Maple Glaze? Hold on. I just get it at the grocery store. Again, you can use maple extract, but the flavor is not as strong, so I prefer the Mapeline. Oh, where is it? Oh, there it is. It looks like this. Hold on. Now my hands are all wet, and now my screen really doesn't want to work. This just looks like this. Imitation maple flavor. And I make my own homemade maple syrup out of this as well, so I always keep a lot around. But yeah, I've always just found it at the grocery store. Like, yeah, local grocery store. It's not a hard find for me. If it's maple, you'll eat it. Yes, Margaret, girl after my own heart. You're definitely trying the donuts. Yay, let me know what you think. And don't forget, if you share on social media and tag me or hashtag Ashlee Marie or hashtag make some awesome, I will reshare on my Instagram stories. Brooke Baker, you're watching on Facebook too. Thanks. You're so sweet. Lorraine, can you use grass night? I already answered that one. Vanilla. I think I caught all the questions this time around. June, just mail you some? Sure. I'm sure they'll be fresh when you get them. Brenda, you want to make these for your monthly group of games? Oh, that sounds like so much fun. I used to have a game group, and I don't anymore, and I miss it. I mean, my kids love to play games too, but it's not quite the same as playing with other adults. So what games do you like to play? I'd love to hear that. Will the glaze crystal over? Yes. What temperatures you use? You got to get back in the swing of things with you being back on. Yes, I'm on every Tuesday, Brenda. All right, I think that's it. Over on YouTube, Deborah, you asked how much do I use, how much yeast do I use stuff. Just open the description box and the whole recipe is in there. Judy Judge, first time you watch me, think you're a fan for sure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Wow, we have Winnipeg. We have people from all over Texas. Dang. A lot of my friends are watching today. That's super fun. Katie, Hillary, Kimber, Melissa, my neighbors. Melissa, you can come over and get donuts just across the street. Okay, I think that is it. I think I'm all caught up and don't think there's any other questions left to answer. So thanks again. I will see you next Tuesday, and have a great week. Bye.